This is the first of 3 short podcasts that will serve as an introduction to our course on political science research methods. I will lay out the general direction of the course, things to look out for, and things to look forward to. We will have some fun, believe it or not. I will always present the learning objectives for our module. This is Module 1, by the way, as we had Module 0 activities last week as a soft opening to our course. Our first objective is to be really specific about what we are studying, namely, what we mean by political science. It is a discipline that has existed since governments have existed. Indigenous peoples sophisticated governance tens of thousands of years ago. Think of the Iroquois confederacies, for instance, or a harbinger of the Athenian city-states, the Chinese dynasties, the Roman Republic and Empire, and on and on. Scholars have sought to know how governments function all of these years. Our second objective is to figure out how to write a good research question for a research topic in political science. Good questions bring about high-quality research. Having that good research question to guide us is thus crucial to success in our research. Our third objective is to lay out the pathway towards scientific success, namely how to follow something called the scientific method. The closer we adhere to the method, the more reliable and valid our results are. In other words, the better our story gets in explaining an important political phenomenon. Our fourth objective is to identify a good dependent variable and a good independent variable. The real secret to passionate political science research is to find a dependent variable that is compelling to our minds, that we feel we must find the answer to. Then, we can find independent variables that help explain this intriguing puzzle of ours. Our fifth objective is to learn how to write a good hypothesis about our research question. A hypothesis is an educated guess about what may explain variation in our dependent variable. Political scientists love to test hypotheses about the political world. It is our vocation, so to speak. Our sixth and final objective for this module is to identify different ways to design research, taking advantage of the type of information available and the resources at our disposal to undertake the research enterprise. After all, our resources govern our ability to work. So what is political science? There have been a lot of attempts to distill what we as political scientists do. Some definitions sound formulaic and abstract, if impressive, such as that of the renowned University of Chicago political scientist David Easton in 1965, who said, "The study of politics is the study of the authoritative allocation of values." This means that a political structure gives more value to some activities, such as abiding by laws, and that the value givers are those in some sort of authority, either through democratic elections and processes or authoritarian control over power. Taking Easton's thought as a starting point, we can then suggest that political science is the study of the authoritative allocation of values, or politics, in a scientific manner, or one that incorporates research questions, hypotheses to test, and a method of testing them. The goal of our work is to describe or trace patterns in political occurrences, as well as to explain or say why a political event has occurred. What are different subfields in political science? We can divide them into 3 rough categories. And I should add that there are 2 further categories of study, political philosophy and public law, that I will not be able to do justice to in this course. Comparative politics is the first subfield we will consider. It is, as the name suggests, an exercise in comparison, where the units of comparison are similar enough to each other, such as parliamentary election outcomes in the United Kingdom and Canada, or democratic backsliding in the United States and France. A second subfield is international relations, which has as its subject matter the ways in which sovereign nation-states, recognized ethno-linguistic nations such as the Basque region and Kurdistan, and organizations whose members are either sovereign nation-states or non-governmental actors, interact with one another. It covers a broad terrain, the globe, but its topics are relatively circumscribed. 2 major examples involve interstate war and interstate trade, or what we call international political economy. A third subfield in U.S. political science is American politics. This involves political behavior in American political space, either the federal government in Washington, D.C., or the 50 states or localities. There are numerous actors to study in this realm, but two examples to point out are presidential elections, which seem to be perpetual these days, and congressional voting behavior on the floors of the House and Senate. I have suggested several research topics, but I also don't want to neglect other prominent ones that may interest you. Election outcomes at all levels of democratic and semi-democratic governance worldwide are of major interest. Some of the best work on elections is comparative in nature, such as the book by Michael Lewis Beck titled Economics and Elections, The Major Western Democracies, published in 1988. Protest behavior is also of critical importance. Knowing why the Arab Spring occurred will be of great use to society. Understanding the origins of the Yellow Vest protest movement in France gives insight into the challenges of French politics and society. We would wish to know the causes of conflict and war. There are famous data sets that are devoted to cataloging conflicts based on their intensity, such as the Correlates of War dataset and the PRIO dataset in Scandinavia. These datasets are explored extensively to figure out what the causes of war may be. Terrorism is a specific type of violence perpetrated by weaker actors against stronger entities, and usually a radical organization is the perpetrator against a government. There are instances of state-sponsored terror, such as that by the Islamic Republic of Iran and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, better known as North Korea. Dr. Allen teaches a Civil War and Terrorism course. Dr. Hausiger teaches a course on judicial decision-making. Are there discernible patterns to how U.S. Supreme Court justices make their decision? What about state courts? Can this reasoning be extended to other countries? Hint, yes, as Dr. Hausiger studies Canadian courts. Policymaking is another area of perennial interest to political scientists. How can we explain environmental policymaking? What about fiscal and budgetary policy? Education policy? There is much that the government regulates, and the regulatory state is another productive area of political science research. Economic development at all levels, local, regional, national, is deemed to be critical for political development. One of the oldest hypotheses in political science, stretching back to Aristotle some 25 centuries ago, is that the wealthier the country, the more likely it is to be democratic. All of these topics make for political science to be a variety-filled discipline. Each of the topics that I have identified, and of course I do not have an extensive, exhaustive list of topics, so there are many others to think about, can be turned into a question. That is a key job of us political scientists, to come up with good research questions. The basic idea of the research enterprise is that we are interested in explaining variation, that is, our dependent variable. What kind of variation are we discussing? For each research topic, we've identified important variation. Some candidates win presidential elections, and other times their opponents win. Protests over laws take place and don't take place. War occurs and peace occurs. Terrorist attacks take place, and sometimes they're thwarted. Sometimes U.S. Supreme Court justices overturn precedent, sometimes they uphold precedent. Some localities adopt strict COVID-19 protocols, and others did not. Some countries are more economically developed than others. But these statements are not enough to construct a study on. They lack a simple thing, a question. We need to ask the why question. Why do we observe variation in our variable of interest, the dependent variable? Only then can we begin to engage in a scientific enterprise in understanding political behavior. Here are examples of good research questions. Why do Republicans win presidential elections sometimes, and other times Democrats win? Why are there protests after some elections but not others? Why do two countries go to war while others did not? Why do some countries experience a large number of terrorist attacks while others did not? Why does the Supreme Court sometimes ignore precedent while other times it honors it? Why did some states adopt more stringent COVID-19 mitigation policies than others did? Why are some countries more developed than others are? Here are our questions. The next podcast will address the scientific method.